There is a particular kind of quiet that arrives, not when the world is empty, but when you finally stop listening for it. It's the silence of notifications you no longer anticipate. It's the calendar with no circled dates, the holiday that passes without a call. And the most startling part, you don't feel a void. You feel relief. This wasn't a strategic purge. You didn't draft a list and light a match. It was a slow, almost imperceptible retreat. One unanswered message, one event you chose not to attend. It was the gradual cessation of a performance you were tired of starring in. You just stopped. Stopped pretending interest. Stopped forcing conversation. Stopped being present for those whose absence was your constant reality. You don't leave people. You leave the person you had to become for them. Maybe you see yourself here, the one who went quiet, the one who vanished, the subject of confused whispers. What happened to them? But the truth they'll never grasp is this: your loneliness began long before your solitude did. This is the unspoken reality for those who walk away. You check your contacts and realize it has been seasons since you initiated a "how are you?" Not out of malice, but because the script of small talk now feels foreign on your tongue. Your schedule is yours. Your energy is yours. And "I'm busy" has transformed from a lie you told others to a truth you tell yourself. It's not an excuse anymore. It's a declaration, and you no longer attach an apology to it. This shift didn't occur in a day. Your heart didn't turn to stone overnight. It calcified layer by layer over countless mornings. You were the cornerstone friend, the one who remembered anniversaries, who answered the 3 a.m. call, who showed up with soup and silence when it was needed. You were the safe harbor. Then your own storm hit. Your foundation cracked. You, for once, reached out a hand into the darkness, expecting to find another. And you found space, empty air. Perhaps a well-meaning thinking of you, floating in the digital ether. Maybe a promise to connect later that dissolved into the perpetual later. It wasn't the absence of aid that carved the deepest groove. It was the crystal clear revelation of an absence that had always been there. You had been emotionally solo, even within the choir. From that moment, every relationship became an equation you despised solving. What is the emotional cost? What is the actual return? The arithmetic became unbearably simple. You were bankrupt, giving loans to those who showed no intention of ever repaying. So you closed the bank. People observed the change, of course, when you cease to be perpetually available, when you are no longer the architect of every plan, when no becomes your default until the invites dry up. They see the what. They are blind to the why. You've changed. You're so distant. They frame it as an interrogation, as if you owe them the ghost of your former self, the version that was slowly evaporating from overgiving. They want the pleaser back, the one who said yes, who rearranged their life, who placed others in the prime position. They don't comprehend that person didn't fade away. They were laid to rest out of necessity. Isolation isn't the fear of people. It's the peace of no longer being disappointed by them. Your body understood the pattern before your mind could articulate it. It learned every time you opened a door, every time you extended trust, every time you offered the unguarded version of you. It ended the same way. You, alone, sweeping up the pieces, the friend who faded during your grief, the partner who pledged stability then revoked it, the family that gathered for photos but scattered during crises. Your mind began to see the finale in the opening act. You'd meet someone, and a quiet, weary voice would ask, "What will be the reason this time?" This wasn't pessimism. It was a forecast built on a decade of data. So you started controlling the only variable you could, the departure. If leaving is an inevitability, you will dictate the terms. You'd sever the tie before the other end could fray. Preemptive goodbyes hurt less than sudden abandonments. At least this way, you're facing the direction you're traveling. Some will label it self-sabotage. You know it as preservation. It's rarely cinematic. No explosive argument. No dramatic monologue. It's quieter. A text left unread for a day, then a week, then forever. It's a series of polite declines until your presence is no longer factored in. It's moving apartments and not sending a new address. It's deactivating accounts without a farewell post, without offering anyone the opportunity to pretend they'd ask you to stay. It's the gentle drift. Or, sometimes, the clean break. The outcome is identical. You are gone. You might bump into a familiar face from the past. "How have you been?" they'll ask. "Good, you'll reply. The dance of pleasantries. Internally, you understand. We were never truly allies. We were just characters in each other's periphery. They enjoyed the performance, not the person behind it. And when the actor grew exhausted, the stage was simply empty. The unvarnished truth. You felt profoundly alone in crowded rooms. Physical solitude just let the external reality finally mirror the internal one. They may believe you despise them. The reality is more unsettling. You feel neutral. Hostility requires an investment of energy you've chosen to reclaim. You've moved beyond the need for that heat. They crave closure. A neat narrative where you explain your exit, granting them a chance to rebut, to apologize, to rewrite history. But closure would require translating your pain for an audience that never truly listened. It would mean picking at scars that have just begun to heal. So you offer silence. Let them craft whatever story absolves them. You won't be reading it. Here's what surprises you. The peace. The birthday with only your own well wishes. The crisis you navigate alone because you've built the tools. You expected desolation. Instead, you found clarity. The quiet has become not your enemy, but your sanctuary. This blueprint wasn't drafted in adulthood. Its lines were etched much earlier. Perhaps you were the child who learned that emotional needs were disruptive, that tears were an inconvenience, that triumph was met with distraction or jealousy. You absorbed a core lesson: needing others is a liability. Attachment is a prelude to disappointment. Vulnerability gets turned against you. So your nervous system adapted. It built fortifications before you knew what war you were fighting. You became self-reliant, not as a preference, but as a fundamental strategy for survival. You learned to want nothing because wanting led to hurt. You became the kid who didn't ask for help with homework, who didn't bring friends home, who mastered the art of making themselves invisible in plain sight. Those early dynamics became your map of the world, a map that consistently led to the same destination: you on your own. Every adult connection that followed was just another data point confirming the map's accuracy. Your neural pathways cemented around this perceived law. Connection equals eventual pain. Trust is a high-risk venture. So when you distance yourself, you're not being heartless. You're being faithful to every lesson life has drilled into you. The criticisms still find their mark. You're guarded. You don't let anyone in. As if you haven't spent years trying to dismantle your own defenses. as if you haven't forced your walls down, time and again, hoping this person would be different. The result was a recurring echo. The friend who vanished when your life lost its shine. The love that was contingent on you remaining easy. Same story, new characters. You remember the specific textures of those letdowns. The message you sent when you were shattered, marked seen. The call you made asking for an ear, met with, "Can I call you right back?" And then, infinite silence. You recall their emergent sighs, the ones you raced toward, and you remember yours, the ones met with a chorus of "I am so swamped right now." All valid excuses that coalesced into one message. You are on your own, so you stopped. Not because you are defective, because you finally heeded the screaming alarm your system has been sounding for years. This is unsustainable. The expenditure, the hope, the emotional labor, the inevitable letdown far exceeds any return. You were bankrupt, offering loans to those who didn't acknowledge the debt. You began the audit. How often did they initiate? How many conversations were monologues about their life? How many of your needs were sidestepped? The final report was unequivocal. You weren't in partnerships. You were in service roles. People misunderstand. They think you've traded connection for isolation. They don't see that for you. Isolation isn't the lesser option. It's the only one where you cannot be betrayed. It's not about misanthropy. It is about safeguarding the last remaining ember of your ability to trust by not exposing it to another draft. You've become an expert in the early warnings. You can spot the pattern in the first act. The person who only appears when they require a resource. The fair weather companion, present for celebration but absent for struggle. You feel that familiar, heavy calculus in your chest, the scorekeeping you wish you could unlearn. You see the exit sequence from a mile away. The growing gaps between replies. The conversations growing shallower. The "we should catch up" that never materializes. You've seen this film too many times. Now, at the first hint of the opening credits, you quietly leave the theater. You don't make a scene. You just stop buying tickets. Some will say you've surrendered on humanity. They are mistaken. You've surrendered on the pantomime. You've given up accepting fragments and calling it a meal. You've given up being an option while treating others as a priority. The so-called coldness is an indifference. It's the exhaustion of someone who has bled for spectators who never noticed they were wounded. They say you've built walls. You built a shoreline, a boundary where the wrong people wash away, and the right ones, should they ever arrive, can find solid ground. But after years of only tides taking, never giving, that shoreline can start to look like a cliff face. Perhaps it has to. The deepest loneliness you've ever felt wasn't in this chosen quiet. It was in the middle of the crowd. It was speaking and not being heard. It was needing and being met with averted eyes. The physical aloneness didn't create the emptiness. It just stopped pretending the emptiness wasn't already there. You aren't running from connection. You are walking toward a self-respect you were never afforded in the crowd. This isn't an ending. It's a necessary intermission, a space to heal, to remember who you are when you're not performing for an unpaid audience. It's where you finally choose yourself. But let's pause here, in this quiet. Let's unpack the suitcase you've been carrying. It's heavier than it looks, isn't it? It's not just filled with the absence of others, but with the ghost weight of every role you ever played. The mediator, the therapist, the cheerleader, the last resort planner, the emotional shock absorber. For years, you wore these titles like uniforms, changing costumes depending on who entered the room. You became so proficient at reading a room's emotional temperature that you lost the ability to sense your own. Your internal compass wasn't broken. It was just perpetually set to other. Consider the sheer cognitive load of this performance. It's a form of emotional accounting that runs in the background of your mind. A constant tabulation of gigantic that you never signed up to manage. You weren't just giving your time or your ear. You were paying a tax on your very soul. A tax levied on your attention, your peace, your creative energy resources that are finite and non-renewable. And for what? For the privilege of remaining on a roster? For the avoidance of being labeled difficult or selfish? The return on investment wasn't just low. It was often negative, leaving you emotionally in debt. This explains the peculiar fatigue that accompanies social interaction for you now. It's not introversion in the classic sense. It's the exhaustion of a veteran actor asked to go back on stage for a play they know will close badly. The lines are stale. The character feels like a prison, and the audience, they're not even watching you. They're watching the character, demanding an encore of a performance that nearly killed the performer. The thought of delivering those lines one more time doesn't just bore you. It induces a kind of spiritual nausea. The quiet isn't empty. It's the blessed relief of taking off the costume and wiping away the makeup, of looking in the mirror and seeing, however faintly, the contours of your own face again. And what of the mythology of normal relationships was sold? The constant hum of connection, the group chats, the weekend plans, the shared milestones. You tried that script. You followed the blueprint. You showed up with the casseroles and the congratulations. You sent the checking in texts. You hosted the gatherings. But you started to notice a disturbing pattern. Your presence was a utility. You were the listener, the helper, the organizer of function in their lives, not a person in your own right. Your value was conditional upon your usefulness. When you were the supporting character in their drama, you had a part. When your own story took a tragic turn, the stage was suddenly empty. You were no longer an actor. You were part of the set dressing, easily overlooked. This realization brings a unique kind of grief. It's not the sharp pain of a single betrayal, but the deep, chronic ache of systemic irrelevance. It's the grief for the person you could have been had you not spent your emotional capital on bankrupt ventures. It's mourning the time, the energy, the versions of yourself you sent out into the world like ships that never returned. This grief is quiet. It doesn't wail. It sits in your ribcage, a dense, heavy knowledge. And this grief is the very soil from which your withdrawal grows. You aren't cutting people off out of spite. You are in a state of mourning for the connections that never truly were, and you need the quiet to bury the dead properly. Now, let's talk about the aftermath, the space you're in now. It's often portrayed as a barren wasteland, a social desert, but that's an outsider's view. From the inside, it's not a desert. It's a fallow field. For the first time in years, the soil of yourself is not being trampled by the footprints of others' demands. It's resting. It's clearing out the weeds of obligation and the invasive species of others' expectations. This fallow period is not wasted time. It is essential, sacred agricultural work. You are recovering the nutrients of your own identity. You are listening for the native plants of your own desires, your own curiosities, your own rhythms, which were starved of sunlight for so long. In this space, you begin a reclamation project. You reclaim your time, not as a luxury, but as a fundamental right. You reclaim your energy, directing it inward to repair the leaks in your own spirit. You reclaim your narrative, No longer are you the side character in everyone else's story, the one who is so nice but somehow forgettable. You are the author, the protagonist, and the editor of your own life. This can feel strangely disorienting at first. With no one to perform for, who are you? The answer doesn't come in a thunderclap. It comes in whispers. In the book you finally read for pleasure. In the walk you take without sharing the photo. In the meal you cook just for yourself, with exactly the spices you like. These small acts are revolutionary. They are quiet declarations of independence. Society will pathologize this. It will call it hermit mode, antisocial behavior, a crisis. It fears the self-sufficient individual because it challenges the core transactional model of modern connection, that your worth is tied to your social capital, your network, your visibility. To step away is to opt out of the economy. And to opt out is the ultimate act of defiance. You are stating, through your absence, that your value is intrinsic and non-negotiable. You are not a product to be consumed by the attention of others. This path inevitably leads you to a crossroads of compassion, specifically self-compassion. For years, you likely directed immense compassion outward, offering understanding and forgiveness to others for their absences, their flaws, their limitations. Yet, you were merciless with yourself. Every failed connection was a referendum on your worth. Every faded friendship was proof you were too much or not enough. In the quiet, that internal critic begins to lose its voice, drowned out by the simple, persistent fact of your own presence. You are here. You are tending to yourself. You are not leaving. This consistent showing up for yourself, in the mundane moments, builds a new kind of trust, not in others, but in your own capacity to be your own sanctuary. It is from this fortified place of self-trust that you can finally see the past with clarity, not just pain. You can see that young version of you, desperate for connection, adapting and contorting to fit into spaces that were never shaped for them. You can feel compassion for that person. They weren't foolish or weak. They were operating on a survival blueprint drawn in childhood, a map that said love is earned through service and safety is an illusion. You are not erasing that person. You are integrating them. You are bringing that hungry, hopeful self into the safety of your own adult care, finally giving them the unconditional attention they always sought from the outside world. This is the profound alchemy of the quiet cutoff. It begins as an act of defense, a retreat from perceived predators. But if you stay with it, if you dare to inhabit the silence fully, it transforms into an act of profound creation. You are not just walking away from something. You are walking toward the arduous, beautiful task of building a home within yourself. You are learning the architecture of your own soul, where the load-bearing walls are, where the light falls best, what foundations need reinforcing. And so, the question of going back or letting people in becomes irrelevant in its old form. The goal is no longer to re-enter the marketplace of conditional relationships. The goal is to become so solid in your own citadel of self that if connection never comes again, it will not be because you need a tenant to fill your empty rooms, but because you have the luxury of choosing a guest worthy of your sanctuary. You will not be seeking someone to complete you or distract you from yourself. You will be considering if their presence complements the peace you have built, if they respect the sacred quiet you have earned. This journey has no destination marked, cured, or fixed. It is a continuous orientation toward interior truth. Some days the quiet will feel like freedom. Other days it may brush up against an old, familiar loneliness. The difference now is that you are present with that feeling. You are not frantically texting someone to drown it out. You are sitting with it, learning its contours, understanding it as a part of the human experience, not a verdict on your life. This is emotional sovereignty. So, to the person in the quiet who feels misunderstood by a world that values noise, you are not behind. You are not broken. You are on a frontier that much of the world is afraid to explore, the frontier of the self. You are mapping territories of your own being that were colonized by other people, as needs for far too long. The work is slow. It is often invisible. There are no badges or milestones to post. But with every day you choose your own peace over someone else's drama. With every time you honor your own exhaustion instead of pushing through it to perform. With every silent moment you spend listening to your own heart instead of the chatter of the world, you are reclaiming a kingdom. Let's go even deeper into that reclaimed kingdom. What does its daily life look like? It looks like the end of a phantom limb sensation. For years, you felt the ache of a connection that wasn't there. The compulsive reach for a phone to share a moment with someone who wouldn't appreciate its significance. That phantom itch has finally ceased. Your attention, once a beam of light constantly scanning the external world for threats or opportunities to please, has turned inward. It now illuminates your own landscape. You notice the changing quality of your own thoughts, the subtle shifts in your energy throughout the day. You develop rituals that honor your rhythm, not the rhythm of a group. You discover that boredom is not an emergency to be solved by social media or another person's conversation. It is fertile ground where your own creativity, long suppressed, begins to tentatively sprout. There is a rebuilding of intuition. For years, your gut feelings were overridden by shoulds and obligations. You ignored the knot in your stomach when a certain person called. You dismissed the dread before an event you felt obliged to attend. Now, in the quiet, you can hear that inner voice again. It's faint at first, a whisper. You learn to trust its gentle yes and its firm no. This intuition becomes your most trusted advisor, more reliable than any external opinion. It guides you toward what genuinely nourishes you, a certain piece of music, a walk in a specific direction, the desire to create something, and steers you away from the psychic pollutants you once tolerated. This path is not a straight line of escalating peace. It is a spiral. You will circle back to old wounds, but from a higher vantage point. A memory will surface, a birthday forgotten, a vulnerability met with mockery, and the pain will feel fresh. But now, instead of reaching for the numbing agent of someone else's validation, you will sit with that younger version of yourself who experienced that hurt. You will offer them the compassion that was absent in that moment. You will tell them, I see you. That was wrong. You didn't deserve that. I am here now. This is how healing happens, not by forgetting the past, but by reparenting yourself through it. The world's pressure to rejoin the noise will be constant. Well-meaning people will say, you just need to get out more, or not everyone is like that. They will interpret your peace as stagnation, your contentment as depression. This is the final test of your resolve. It requires a new kind of courage, the courage to be misunderstood, to be labeled, to have your serene absence interpreted as a judgment on their chaotic presence. You must become fluent in the language of polite, unyielding no. You learn that I'm not available is a complete sentence. You understand that explaining your hard-won peace to someone who can conceive of it is like describing color to someone who sees only in black and white. It is a futile translation, so you stop trying. And in that cessation of explanation, you find your ultimate power. Your life becomes a closed book to those who only ever judged it by its cover. The story inside is for you. It is written in the language of small joys, hard-won insights, and an integrity that no longer bends to the weather of other people's moods. You are no longer a satellite, orbiting the lives of others, deriving your light from their sun. You have become your own center of gravity, your own source of warmth. You realize the most profound connection you will ever forge is not the frantic, grasping for another, but the serene, unshakable bond with the self you have finally come home to. Maybe one day you'll open a gate in that kingdom, when you meet someone who makes safety feel possible, not perilous. But for now, you are tending to that fragile inner flame. You are protecting it from winds that have blown it out too many times before. This withdrawal isn't the absence of love. It's the deepest form of it directed inward. It's your entire being stating, enough. You are not cold. You are clear. You are not broken. You are protected. And in this quiet space you've claimed, you are not missing out. You are finally, fully showing up for yourself. If this resonates with you, if you understand this quiet, then you understand a profound kind of strength. Show this video some love, hit that like button. It helps this channel, Mind Explained, reach others who need to hear this. You're not alone in your aloneness.